All right, welcome. Today we're going to put on our detective hats and solve a really common medical mystery. We're going to follow the clues, we'll line up the suspects, and we are going to crack the case of anemia.
You know, it all starts with that one super common question. Why am I so tired all the time? We've all been there, right? That feeling of being just completely wiped out, weak, maybe even a little dizzy. But what if it's not just about getting more sleep? What if that feeling is actually your body trying to send you a message, a clue that something deeper is going on?
Well, that clue very often points right here, to our crime scene, anemia. Now, putting it simply, anemia just means your blood isn't carrying enough oxygen to all the parts of your body that need it. Think of your red blood cells like a giant fleet of oxygen delivery trucks. With anemia, you either don't have enough trucks on the road, or the trucks you do have can't carry a full load.
Now, what's so tricky here is just how vague all of these symptoms are. I mean, fatigue, weakness, feeling short of breath, that could be a million different things. And that is exactly why we have to approach this like detectives. These are just the initial reports from the scene, you know? They tell us a crime has happened, but they don't tell us who did it.
Okay, so here's where we get our first big break. The entire investigation pretty much hinges on one single crucial piece of evidence that we get from a totally standard blood test. And it's not about how many red blood cells you have, it's about how big they are, the size of the cell. That's our first major clue, and it's what's gonna blow this case wide open.
This brings us to a specific lab value called the mean cell volume, or MCV for short. It's just a measurement of the average size of your red blood cells. And that one number is amazing because it splits our entire investigation into three possible paths. Are the cells too small, what we call microcytic? Are they too big, or macrocytic? Or are they just normal sized? For today's investigation, we're going to follow the two most revealing paths, the case of the tiny cells and the case of the giant cells. So let's open up case file number 1, the small cells. When we go down this path, our investigation almost always leads us to the single most common cause of anemia in the entire world, a simple deficiency of iron. So let's build a profile for our prime suspect, iron deficiency anemia. Like any good culprit, it has a clear motive and opportunity. Maybe the body is demanding way more iron than usual, like during pregnancy or in growing kids. Maybe it's losing iron somewhere, like with slow, chronic bleeding. Or maybe it's just not getting enough iron in the first place, either from diet or from problems absorbing it. Now, while those general anemia symptoms are vague, iron deficiency leaves behind some very specific and kind of weird calling cards. Things like pica, which is this strange compulsion to eat things that aren't food, like chewing on ice all day or even craving dirt. Or another one is koilonychia, where your fingernails get really soft and curve upwards like a spoon. If you spot these clues, you're getting really, really close to nabbing your culprit. And this is how we get our conviction. The lab tests are like the suspect's fingerprints all over the crime scene. Of course, the serum iron is low. That makes sense. But the real smoking gun is a test called ferritin. Think of ferritin as the body's iron savings account. When it's low, it means the vaults are totally empty. And at the exact same time, another value, the TIBC, is sky high. That means the body is sending out every transport protein it has, desperately looking for any scrap of iron it can find. It's an open and shut case. Okay, so our last case was all about cells that were too small. Now we're going to open up our second case file, which deals with the exact opposite problem, red blood cells that are way too big. And this clue points our investigation in a totally different direction. You see, when cells get too big, it's usually a sign that there's a problem in the factory. They can't divide properly while they're being made. And this production issue is almost always caused by not having enough of one of two key ingredients needed to make DNA, vitamin B12 or folate. So these are our two new main suspects. Let's start with the profile for vitamin B12 deficiency. It's often linked to things like strict vegan diets because B12 is mostly in animal products, or absorption issues from stomach surgery. But its most important feature, the key symptom that really sets it apart, is neurologic damage. We're talking numbness, tingling in the hands and feet, even trouble with balance. And here's a fascinating clue. This is a slow burn. Your liver stores years' worth of B12, so a deficiency can sneak up on you over a very long time. Now, for our other suspect, folate deficiency. The causes here are a little different. Often it's about poor diet, which can be common in the elderly or when the body just needs more, like during pregnancy. It might cause a sore tongue, but the single most important fact for our investigation is this. Folate deficiency does not cause those neurologic problems we see with B12. That distinction is absolutely critical.
So how in the world do we tell them apart for sure? We need a tiebreaker. Now, both deficiencies can cause high levels of a substance called homocysteine, but only B12 deficiency causes high levels of another substance, methylmalonic acid, or MMA. This is the definitive test. If MMA is elevated, your culprit is B12 deficiency. If that MMA is normal, you're looking at a folate problem. Simple as that.
But, in any good detective story, there's sometimes a plot twist. What if the clues don't quite add up? What if the cells are small, just like an iron deficiency, but the rest of the story, it just feels different? Well, sometimes there's an unexpected accomplice at play, one that's particularly common in people who are already sick. And this leads us to the central puzzle of what's called anemia of chronic inflammation. See, in this case, it's not a supply problem. The body has tons of iron stored away. The problem is getting to it. Chronic inflammation basically puts the body's iron stores on lockdown. It locks the iron away in storage so it can't be released to make new red blood cells. The iron is there, it's just trapped.
So, how does a good detective tell the difference between an empty vault and a locked vault? You go back and check the ferritin levels. Remember how in iron deficiency the ferritin was low because the stores were empty? Well, in anemia of chronic inflammation, the ferritin is normal or even high because the stores are packed full. And that TIBC, which was high before, is now low or normal because the body isn't even trying to find more iron. It knows it has it just can't use it. This is the decisive clue that cracks the case.
So there you have it. That's the whole detective process from start to finish. You start by recognizing those general symptoms. Then you examine the first piece of evidence, the blood count. You follow that critical first clue, the cell size. From there, you use more specific tests to analyze the fingerprints, and that allows you to finally zero in on the true culprit and solve the case.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. Anemia isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning. It's not really a single disease so much as it's a critical clue that something else is going on. It's a big, flashing signpost pointing you toward a deeper truth about your health. So the real question you should be asking is, what is your body trying to tell you? Thanks for tuning in.